So the idea here is, anyone can be a player, right? If you have an inhabitant, you can bring it into the game. Or if you don't have an inhabitant, you can rent or draft from the Pixel Vault community in order to enter the game. Again, like I said, the POW or ticket. So the reason we say ticket is we want to give ourselves the ability to reward players free entry, either just as perks or, if you have a particularly bad run that is sort of like, oh, hey, that's too bad. Try again, buddy. And then you kind of organize your strategy. So a lot of the strategy comes from sort of what you are holding, right? So you've already picked the inhabitants, but you have these skills and powers that can match differently against different inhabitants. And so that's where you enter this piece of the game. It's sort of like, oh, this one's better for me here, and that one's, not so good for me there. But the drafting marketplace for this one's really cheap. So, boom, boom, boom. And this draft itself is almost like its own little marketplace. So the more often an inhabitant is chosen or a pip is chosen for battle, the marketplace will automatically increase their price it costs to recruit that meta hero in the future. And so, if you have a particularly good one, a particularly desirable one for whatever reason, they'll slowly increase in draft cost, which will give other inhabitants kind of like, a chance to get drafted themselves. And so that's sort of the idea for that, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And then, then you brawl, which is you play the strategic game. You'll be matched against a random opponent, which is some other player, and, see what happens, right? And so the game itself, it's not turn-based. It's real-time, but it's automated. And so, what we see over here in our testing is just the meta heroes go at it. They, superhero fighting, laser blast, shields, pushing, jumping. And so you kind of get what we're going for is this kind of like really cinematic, fun experience of watching the meta heroes duke it out. And then, you play several rounds of that. You have to try and win a certain amount before you lose a certain amount. So there's like a little strategy in there. And then no matter what, you'll always, get some kind of reward. Obviously, if you're winning, you're getting a better reward than if you're losing. And then, ideally, you can use those rewards to, beef up your strategy and then do the whole thing again. So, and then we have this concept of the battles will take place on the different planets. We're going to be talking about at some probably future date a metagame where the planet holders can influence how often a certain planet comes up in order to benefit themselves, which I think is another kind of interesting, integration of the community. And then we also have this other mechanic. It's all metagame mechanic that we're calling missions. It's sort of like you can think of like a quests or like a more generic Web3 quests architecture that allows for lots of different avenues for telling stories, for doing, achievements, for doing a lot of familiar game concepts, but in kind of a Web3 way. And training is one of those. So meta hero holders, they can advantage themselves in the draft by doing this sort of active staking game or semi-active staking game that will, improve their stats, make them more desirable, make them competitive in the drafting marketplace. And so that will be this sort of like meta game that, if you choose to engage with, there will be lots of reasons to do so.